Pictured is a seagull flying over Lake Michigan. This is an example of an aquatic biome, specifically a freshwater biome, which is characterized by the body of water. Within this biome, the water is separated into different zones. The surface of the lake is the photic zone, where enough light hits to have photosynthesis. The other portion of the lake is the aphotic zone, where little light hits the surface causing less photosynthesis. The water is lighter closer to the shore because it is composed mostly of the photic zone. The water farther out in the lake is darker because it is mostly the aphotic zone. Another zone is the benthic zone, which is the bottom sediment of the lake. In Lake Michigan's case, it is mainly composed of sand. When the water in the photic zone evaporates, the water collects in the atmosphere until the water condenses into clouds and finally precipitates back onto the land. This is the water cycle, and the clouds in the picture are in the condensation phase of this cycle. Additionally, the seagull flying above the water is likely trying to catch a fish to eat. The relationship between the seagull and the fish is considered predation, because the seagull is preying on the fish for better survival. The fish it eats could either be a primary or secondary consumer. In other words, it could either eat plants, making it a primary consumer, or living organisms, making it a secondary consumer. If the fish were a secondary consumer, the seagull would be a tertiary consumer, which means it eats an organism that consumes other organisms. Depicted in the picture are two birds. Notice how the birds are hard to spot, hence the circle around them. This is because both birds display cryptic coloration. Otherwise known as camouflage, cryptic coloration allows the birds to blend into their surroundings and makes it harder for predators to see them. Their coloring could also be due to sexual selection. In many bird species, the males tend to have more vibrant coloring compared to the females. This is because the bright-colored males use their coloring to attract female mates. Since this coloring only occurs in one gender and increases reproduction, it is considered sexual selection. Another thing common in birds is migration. During the wintertime, a bird's food sources decrease tremendously. In order to survive, the birds migrate or move to a different location. Additionally, each bird is from a different type of species. They are part of the same community or group of populations living in the same area. This allows for the possibility of interactions between the birds, such as competition. Both birds could compete for the same food. The food increases both of the species' survival, so it is considered competition. This is a fallen tree with mushrooms on it. There is a population of mushrooms living on the tree, since it is a group of the same species of mushroom in one area. The tree, which has a large population of mushrooms on it, is an excellent example of logistic growth and carrying capacity. After the tree had fallen, the mushrooms slowly began to increase in numbers. The rate at which the mushrooms increased was exponential. The tree, however, only has a certain amount of surface area and nutrients. Therefore, the tree has a certain carrying capacity. The carrying capacity slows the rate at which the mushroom population increases till it levels off at that certain point. This turns the rate at which the mushrooms increase in numbers from exponential growth, in which a population grows without limitations, to logistical growth. As previously stated, the mushrooms inhabit the tree and gain energy from it. Mushrooms are a type of consumer called decomposers. They feed off of detritus, which is dead organisms. In this case, the mushroom's detritus is the fallen tree.
The tree seen here has been impacted by abiotic factors, as seen by the cuts into its bark. These were probably caused by the inorganic metal blade of a knife, and not the result of some biological cause. This is likely one of the many results of human population growth. As more and more people visit the area, some of them are likely to carve things into the trees. The tree is also affected by the fungal pathogen beech bark disease, evidenced by the white marks on its bark which resemble snow. The fungus that causes beech bark disease is an invasive species to North America, as it originates in Europe. This explains why it is easily able to infect so many beech trees in our area. The deer shown in the picture is an example of an organism which practices herbivory, meaning that it consumes plants such as grass or leaves for energy. It also makes its home in a terrestrial biome, that being the forests here in northern Michigan, which includes those around the Sleeping Bear Dunes. The deer also contributes to both the nitrogen cycle as well as the phosphorus cycle via the deposits of these chemicals it leaves behind in its waste, which are then further broken down by bacterial and fungal decomposers. These decomposers then deposit these chemicals into the soil, where they then are reabsorbed by plants as nutrients, where they are then eaten again by deer and other herbivores, continuing the respective cycles.
This slide discusses some aspects of etherology, or animal behavior. Beginning with the skunk, this animal is unique in that it uses a concoction of smelly chemicals to ward off the majority of predators. For what usually happens is that a predator approaches the skunk, gets sprayed, backs off, and doesn't approach again out of fear of getting sprayed. This is an example of operant conditioning, in which the actions of an animal are reinforced or dissuaded using a corresponding positive or negative stimulus. In this case, negative. This differs from classical conditioning, in which the typically involuntary response associated with a stimulus is made to be associated with another, usually by pairing the stimuluses together. Now, as a side note, while the skunk does ward off most predators, an exception would be the great horned owl, which has a unique realized niche of being able to hunt the skunk as a food source, increasing its fitness in the sleeping bear dunes environment. Lastly, we have the raccoon, which, like many other animals, utilizes imprinting to teach its young various behaviors such as hunting and scavenging, and does so when the offspring are 2 months old, making it a sensitive period for the cubs, where they are receptive to learning the new skills. This slide provides examples of many interspecific interactions, which are how two different species positively or negatively impacts one another through their actions. A positive-positive interaction, mutualism, is seen in the lichen in the picture on the left. Lichen is a symbiotic relationship between algae, or cyanobacteria, and fungi, where this algae provides resources through photosynthesis for the two, while the fungi provides needed structure through filaments. A positive zero interaction, commensalism, can also be seen through the lichen, though the focus is on the lichen and the tree it's attached to. The lichen benefits from the off-ground position, but the tree neither significantly benefits or suffers from the lichen's presence. A positive-negative interaction, in which one species is not killed, but not outright harmed, parasitism, is seen in the holdout tree on the right. These holes were bored out by numerous emerald ash borers, which have only recently come to Michigan in 2002 through immigration. Emerald ash borers are also an example of a species that faces R selection more than it does K selection, producing as many low-energy offspring as possible, not worried about reaching the carrying capacity of a new ecosystem, and facing more die-off from other causes such as predators or weather.
The burning of fossil fuels, as seen on the right, is an example of the carbon cycle, which is a process by which the carbon compounds are interconverted in their environment. Another effect of burning fossil fuels is greenhouse gases, like carbon dioxide. This causes the Earth's atmosphere to rise in temperature. This is called the greenhouse effect, which is the exchange of incoming and outgoing radiation that warms up the Earth's atmosphere. This temperature increase causes global warming, harming the ecosystem. Pollution and other gases like carbon dioxide in the biosphere causes the Earth to turn more acidic, causing acid precipitation. This is snow, rain, hail that has a lower pH of 5.6.
Here we see a common milkweed plant. What's interesting about the milkweed is that it utilizes the wind to carry its seeds away from it, a type of dispersion. The reasoning behind using this type of dispersion can be broken down into proximate and ultimate causations. Proximate reason for the milkweed to let its seeds ride the wind to emigrate away from the plant is that doing so will greater separate the plant's offspring from one another than if the plant had simply just dropped the seeds. The ultimate reason for doing this is to ensure that the offspring can avoid density-dependent factors such as space and resources in order to best mature and to go on to reproduce, successfully passing on the plant's genes.